Hi folks, thanks for tuning in for another video. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Spyderco Rescue, which you see here. This knife is also referred to as the Breeden Rescue. It is model number C139G and was recently discontinued, so if you're interested in this knife, don't wait too long to pick it up, as with most Spydercos, once one of their knives goes discontinued, it becomes somewhat sought after by collectors or people who are a little bit late to the party, and you tend to find the prices going up rather fast, so don't hesitate if you're interested. The country of origin on this knife is Japan. This is Seki City, Japan, as are, I believe, all of Spyderco's Japanese made knives. And this was designed by a knife maker or knife designer named Jason Breeden, and he was also responsible for the Spyderco Captain, which some of you are probably familiar with. Now, Jason's designs that he's done for Spyderco are fairly polarizing. I think most people seem to either love him or hate him. So they're rather unique. You can obviously see this as a pretty daring blade shape here, and not quite usual, not common. And I really like it, and I bought this knife based almost entirely on looks. I thought the handle was a weird chunky shape, and the blade obviously has this weird kind of bird beak kind of thing going on. And I just had to have it, so I kind of took a chance on it. And, I've had it for about 5 months. I've had it for almost half a year now. And I've carried it often. And I am kind of, I mean, it's a good knife, and I'm leaning towards it being good overall, but I'm kind of split. There's some things I like about it and some things I don't. So I'll get into all that in just a moment. Let me go ahead and give you the specifications. The blade length is 3.4 inches. Overall length is 7.9 inches. And when it's closed, you're looking at 4.4 inches long. So overall, a medium-sized folder in length, but it is a rather thick knife, and it's wide. Once it's closed and in your pocket, it is pretty wide because of those two large humps, one at the opening hole at the blade ramp and then another towards the tip of the blade. By the way, if you hear a lot of noise in the background, I've got all the windows in the house open. It is summer, it is quite warm, and so you might hear cars driving by, neighbor's dog barking, or my fan running, so I apologize for any of the extra noise. Blade steel is VG10, which happens to be one of my favorite blade steels. Spyderco's VG10. It's just a great all-around steel. It doesn't have absolutely amazing edge retention, but it holds an edge very well. It gets very sharp and is quite stainless. It really is probably one of my top three, along with 154 CM and D2. I had no rust issues with it whatsoever. It's been quite humid lately, and I've been carrying this a lot in my pocket, and I've had no problems with that at all. Blade thickness is 1/8 of an inch, and you can see that blade shape is sort of a sheep's foot design. It's definitely got a hollow grind, which starts about halfway down the blade, as you can see there. And the factory edge was really sharp. I can't promise that if you purchase one, yours is going to be exactly as sharp, but mine was had quite the keen edge and has been holding it very well. In fact, I've only been stropping this one. This one has not hit my stones yet. In 5 months of occasional carry, all I've had to do is strop it a few times, which is about on par with any of Spyderco's VG10 blades that get occasional carry. This doesn't go in my pocket every day, but for as often as I carry it and use it, it's been holding up beautifully. The edge bevel and the overall symmetry is pretty even. The grind's a little bit off from one side to the other. I don't know if you're going to be able to make that out, but you can kind of see, if you look right down the face of the blade there, the grinds are a little bit uneven. Some people are really picky about that. I don't really care, as long as the knife closes and opens smoothly and there aren't any functional issues. I'm not really too worried about it, but overall pretty good. G10 handles, the scales here, and then there's stainless steel liners underneath, and those are skeletonized. They'll kind of hold at an angle. You can see those holes that are milled out of there to make it a little bit lighter. And it does use torque screws, as do I think just about all of Spyderco's screw construction knives. There is one Torx size 8, a T8 at the pivot, and then you've got 4 T6 body screws, and then you've got another 3 size T6 Torx screws attaching the clip to the body. It is skeletonized, as I mentioned, and it does have an open back design with these little pillars here, so it's easy to clean out, easy to swab out any crud that gets back there. The texturing is pretty interesting. As I mentioned, it's G10. It's a very ultra fine texturing. And it's even, if some of you are familiar with Spyderco's Paramilitary 2, that one already has a very fine patterning to it, and this one's even finer. So it's got this really cool kind of super fine sandpaper grip feel to it that I really like. I'd like to see this G10 on more models from Spyderco because it's really nice. There is some jimping. You can see that at the back of the thumb ramp and then along the inside of the liner lock there. And overall, comfort and design, as you're looking at it, you think that it might be uncomfortable, and it's not. It's very comfortable in a few different grips. You can hold it further back with my pinky kind of just at the end of the knife there, or you can move forward into that blade choil and put your thumb further up on the ramp, and perfectly comfortable in both positions. And then you can also move your thumb all the way up towards the little swedge there at the back of the spine and hold it that way if you want to get a little bit closer. And that also works pretty well, although that swedge is a little thin, and if you had to apply a lot of pressure with your thumb, that might become a little bit uncomfortable. This knife does have a lanyard hole and is perfectly sized and suitable for paracord. It's got a little pipe or a tube lining the inside of it. It does have a pocket clip, and the pocket clip is 4-way positionable, tip up and tip down for left-handed and right-handed users. Is going to be perfect. And the pocket clip depth and retention is nice. It's about on par with a lot of Spyderco's other models. About a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch will be exposed when it's clipped in your pocket. And I've had no problems with retention. It's a nice snug clip without being overly tight and holds the knife very well. Pocket comfort is pretty good, but it's one of my little issues with this knife because the way that the knife is designed, the way the blade sticks so far out of the handle towards the top and the width of it, when it sits in your pocket, it has a tendency to twist towards the inside. So if you can imagine you're looking down in your pocket right here and the blade is touching the outside edge as it's clipped, rather than sitting flat against it, it kind of wants to turn. So it's a little bit funky, and this knife is so wide, it's one of the wider models and it's one of the thicker models. So if you keep a lot of other stuff in the same pocket as your knife, this might get in the way a little bit. So that might be something to keep in mind. But other than that, like I said, the retention of the pocket clip is perfect. It clips well, and overall it's pretty comfortable. You're not going to feel it in your pocket. It just, because it kind of torques to the side a little bit, it might be a little bit of an issue if you have other stuff in that same pocket. It is a little handle heavy. Weight-wise, it tends to want to kind of fall back in your hand. Not that that's, overall a functional issue. It's just something to note. It's not quite as balanced as some of Spyderco's other models. And the opening mechanism, the opening mechanism is the Spyderco round opening hole, of course, and opens easily even with gloves. If you're using this for a work knife, and I would recommend it for a work knife, gloves will work perfectly. It does have Teflon washers, and it is crazy smooth. What's weird about this knife is that it's not fast to open. In fact, I don't even flick this knife because there's so much tension at the pivot. But I like it, and it's got this really kind of glassy, smooth feel to it. It's just fun to open and close because of it. So this isn't, at least on this particular example, I wouldn't consider this knife to be a really fun flicking knife. But if you want a serious work knife that you don't mind opening a little bit slower, it opens and closes wonderfully. Blade centering is okay. It's a little bit off from one side to the other. It might just be an optical illusion because of the grinds. Of course, it's also a liner lock knife, so you tend to kind of get that little bit of a tweak in the blade sometimes. And the liner lock, as I mentioned, is a little bit weird. It's got, for those of you who care, this particular example has an early lockup, I would think. It's a little bit less than halfway across the bottom of the blade tang there. But the way that this liner lock is recessed into the handle, and you can see very little of it actually extends beyond the handle, but where it does extend beyond is also right at the peak of the that space between the two choils. So what I tend to find is that if you hit it wrong, sometimes it takes you a second to readjust your thumb to get in just the right spot to close it, and it isn't quite as pleasant to close as some other knives because that little peak is right there. It can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable, and sometimes it kind of feels like I'm catching the skin of my thumb and kind of twisting the skin a little bit to get that lock over. So it's a very strong lock, and I have no issues with with overall confidence in that lock, but it's just a little more finicky than I would like. And so that's one other little small ding against the Spyderco Breeden Rescue. It's just that liner lock, I think, could have been implemented a little bit better. if I had had my druthers, I would say that this knife deserves a compression lock, and I would have designed it that way from day one. I'm not sure if that would have been possible. I'm no knife designer, but that's what, to me, this knife begs for a compression lock. It just somehow seems like it would suit this design very well, but that didn't happen. I'm not going to worry about it. Wow, my neighbor's dog is really going crazy today. I haven't noticed any lockup issues at all. No forward or side-to-side play at all, which is really nice. There's no rattling parts. Overall strength of the knife is excellent. And like I said, I have every confidence and trust in the blade itself, the overall design, and the lock. I don't think you're going to have any issues with this thing folding up on you or failing on you at any point. Overall fit and finish is pretty good, except for those few small issues that I mentioned as far as the grind and the centering of the blade, but that's not stuff I'm really going to nitpick on. Overall, I do recommend it. I think that it's a fascinating design, and I can't wait to see some other stuff coming out from Jason Breeden. I hope that he continues his relationship with Spyderco, and we see some other designs from him, because the Captain and the Breeden Rescue here are fantastic. I think they look really cool, and I just hope he keeps bringing out more stuff. I would kind of categorize this as a medium to hard use EDC knife, so this would be good around the house doing general tasks, but the strength of it, the thickness of the knife itself, those nice heavy duty steel liners, the lock strength, and the blade shape, you know, the thickness of that blade, I think just really lends itself well to a work knife or a hard use role. So if you've got some task that you would like to perform, where maybe you're using this as like a camping knife or a hiking knife, I obviously would not recommend it for chopping or batoning. I never recommend folding knives for that at all. But I think for some heavy duty hard cutting all day long, you're cutting through some carpeting or whatever you have, I think that this knife is going to be definitely up to the task. And with this very thick blade, right out towards the tip, that nice hollow grind for some extra strength and some extra weight behind the cut, I think that you're going to be really pleased, and it's going to hold up to just about anything you could throw at it. Now, I will make one quick little last mention of this weird little swedge. Now, it is written in Spyderco's, their marketing, their little ad blurb for this knife, that was to lighten weight, as they kind of thinned that out right there. And it's part of what gives the knife its character, but I would have almost liked to have seen it just with the steel left in place. And the reason for that is because when I do move up my finger into the blade choil and put my thumb on the spine of the blade, if you did want to put a lot of pressure there, the blade becomes so thin that it would definitely become irritating over time. And as I was making some hard cuts with this here and there, I would already kind of notice that. You take your finger away and you can see I've already got that little groove worn in. Now, if you put a lot of pressure on any knife, you're going to find that same situation, but this is so thin it becomes irritating a lot sooner than on other knives. So I would have wished they would have kept that thick, and I would have just dealt with the extra weight. I think that would have actually kind of lent itself to this design anyway. But, it's already done. It's already discontinued, so if you're interested, hurry. I'm going to put some other knives next to it real quick for some comparisons, and then I'll shut this one down. Here is your Spyderco Endura. Kind of get a overall length comparison there. There's the Spyderco Manix 2 lightweight. You can see those two are pretty darn similar in handle and blade length, real close. And finally, move the Endura out of the way, and I'll put the old flagship Paramilitary 2, which I think is finally starting to get a little bit easier for people to find. This one was in short supply for quite some time, but I think they're starting to come into the market a little bit more often now, which is a good thing because it's a really great knife. So there's a few comparisons. I didn't really bring in any other brands because I imagine this is going to mostly appeal to Spyderco fans, probably diehard Spyderco fans, because I don't think a lot of people are going to take a chance on this design, and that's kind of a shame. Maybe that's why it's discontinued so soon, because I think that it's pretty cool, and I think for some people out there looking for a hard use knife, I think this is probably going to be a great choice. Here's a quick thickness comparison there. It's definitely thicker. It's thicker than any of the three knives that I just had out in front of you. So a little thick, a little chunky, weird design, great slicer, cuts beautifully, excellent strength. The Spyderco Breeden Rescue. If you want one, hurry and get your hands on it now because they're not going to last. That's pretty much it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.